Thank you for joining me today. I'm Madeline Blair, and this is Unlocked, a show all about opening possibilities so that when you're hit with the unexpected, you've got options from which to choose. Our show today, by the way, is full of surprises. My guest talks about mindfulness in a manner that is completely different from anything I had read or learned. Yet his expertise is grounded in the original work on mindfulness, and he'll answer why the West has misinterpreted mindfulness. Exciting. Now, after my conversation with our guest, I'll be talking about a book that has a serious message along with ways to act upon that message. And this segment will be filled with surprises as well, so stay tuned. Many years ago, I was visiting the Japanese garden in the city of Portland, Oregon. Now, if you don't know that particular garden, you really should visit it because it is not only designed by Japanese, but it is maintained by Japanese people who know the art of their gardens and their philosophy of it. I remember that garden so distinctly because it captured me so closely. But the fascinating thing was, if I were to close my eyes, what do I see? I see a fence post. You say, why do you see a fence post? Because I saw it and it caught my attention and I drew it. I always bring a sketch pad with me. And I drew that fence post because it was so beautiful. It was that moment when I stayed in the moment and really allowed that fence post to become very real to me. I want to say it, I hope I was mindful at that moment. You know, mindfulness is encouraged by so many people. Do you really know what it means? Do you know what it meant in the original explanation? Today, Gamini, Hewawasam. I'll get it right. Hewawasam. Dr. Gamini Hewawasam joins me. He is CEO of Fine Finish Engineering and an expert on mindfulness who leads with mindfulness. When he described mindfulness, I saw a completely different and accessible way that makes it so clear as to why mindfulness is effective. Learn about this from an expert. And so without further ado, let me bring Gamini on. Gamini, welcome to Unlocked.
Thank you, Madeline. Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you.
Oh, good. Well, I'm gonna say a few more things about you. Dr. Gamini Hewawasam, I got it right that time, stands out as a multifaceted professional combining scholarly pursuits with practical business leadership. As the scholar practitioner at Mindfulness Research Center, his focus lies up in the realms of mindfulness and introspective leadership. In addition to his academic role, he is the CEO of INT Terminal Travel Group in the USA, and as I mentioned, Fine Finish Engineering of Sri Lanka. He is an esteemed member of the Forbes Coach Council, and he is the founder and coach of Mindfulness, the Center for Action Research on Introspective Leadership. Well, that's a really impressive description of someone. You've done so many things, Gamini.
I do.
It's good. It encourages me because I do a lot of things too. And everybody says you do too much. And I say, no, I don't do too much. I do what I want to do. Well, you know, I have to begin by asking you, how did you discover and learn about mindfulness?
My journey with mindfulness began in my homeland, Sri Lanka, where I was born into a Buddhist family. And growing up, I practiced mindfulness as part of our family tradition, following the footsteps of my parents and grandparents and the people around me. And then, however, at that time, I didn't fully grasp the essence of what I was practicing. It was more a customary ritual than a conscious choice. So it wasn't until I pursued my PhD in values driven leadership at Benedictine University in USA. So I started, began deeply understand and appreciate mindfulness because we had some subjects that we pay in a classroom more attention to mindfulness. So every time I pay attention, do the material or the research or the paper and reading the books, then it's always question myself what I did learn back home because I thought I'm perfectly done with those techniques. But it happens to me that I have not done. So I pay more attention to understanding, to find the real meaning of this mindfulness because it's required by the PhD program because we went through some of the material. So I thought, okay, let me find because I have a special interest. I just wanted to know what it is. So that's how I jumped into this
Mm.
area and then found out, oh gosh, whatever I had done was not that really good. And there's the other way to process it. And then I start practicing it. And not only practicing it, and then I apply into my leadership, my businesses, and my family life, and to the society. So the goal here is intellectual happiness, where I am going to, uh, when I'm going to gain it, and why should I stay with it, and then what will happen to the stress that I'm dealing with everyday life. So that's where it came to the mindfulness, what I really wanted to practice.
It's an amazing story. And what is amazing to me is that it took studying a PhD to go back to your roots. It's amazing what
I
when
think yes, that's the beauty of one of the beauty of my value-driven leadership at Benedictine. I have to give the credit to them because that particular program is mold you to understand who you are and what's your value and how do you cultivate your value. That's excellent. So that's the reason for me to go back to my own root and fix it up.
ah, beautiful. You know, values are play such an important role in our lives, and yet I don't think we talk enough about it. But maybe today we'll talk a little bit about it. But first, I want to have you really give us a clear definition as best you can, given the complexity of this. What is the definition of mindfulness?
Um, it's not easy to explain within the given time duration, but I try my best. The mindfulness is coming for us to the West. Mindfulness comes from a English Pali dictionary, which was written in 1882, published in UK. And we have to give the credit to Dr. Rice Davis, who visited Sri Lanka in 1882, because under that time Sri Lanka was a British colony.
Mm.
And he studied Buddha's teaching through the Buddhist monk in Sri Lanka.
Mm.
And then, with his understanding, the original Pali word for mindfulness is satipatthana. That's the Pali word. So
Satipat.
he gave the English translation, mindfulness, to the word satipatthana. And that's what it's written on Pali English dictionary. And that's what we are using in today. But if you go back to the word satipatthana, that word contains three words: sati, upa, and thana. Sati means the attention, upa means inside, and thana is to place or to establish. So when you for my understanding and what I learned from the expert who are really good at Pali and English, The most suitable English word for satipatthana is introspection,
Mm.
not mindful. So now, if we go back to what we learn about mindfulness and replace the word mindfulness with introspection, I think you might be able to get more good results.
Thank you. I that I remember that was what was so exciting when I discovered that about you and why I invited you to the show, because that aspect of introspection is to me actually more approachable than mindfulness. Because I always think of mindfulness as that I have to be very focused and my mind is very still. Whereas introspection is something that I do all the time. I think about something I've done and I really parse it out and think about why did I do this? Why did I, what was the impact? And and it's much more it's easier for me to enter into that kind of exploration rather than trying to clear my mind. Does that make sense to you?
It is very much because that's what because during my PhD, because I have to depend on someone who knows this Pali and English very well. I learned Pali when I was young back in Sri Lanka, but my Pali is not good at all. But I only can understand few words on the Pali, and that's how it is. But then I reach out to a Buddhist monk at West Virginia Meditation Center. He's the head monk who's 96 years old. He's so good, very healthy, and he has been practicing this mindfulness for maybe more than like 75 years. And when you see him, you see the happiness and the state of living, how he is enjoying. So I reach out to him. So I went to him, I sat down with him, and I spent like months and months and months and ended up spending 3 years with him. Oh, he is the one who helped me, and there are a few other monks too, and who helped me to understand. And also, he said, because he has been living in West Virginia for more than 75 years, people like you, and go and talk to him. And then he said, okay, this is what I'm hearing from them. And then I'm telling them, okay, this is what this satipatthana is, the mindfulness is. As soon as they heard, they grab it and they clear many doubts. And they said, aha. So that's the message he gave it to me, and just the way that you explained.
Uh, I, I have I am struck by the fact that you found, I guess, what would be called a guru,
Yep.
where you went to learn from him. Ah, beautiful, beautiful story. Beautiful story. But when you talk about the Buddha, some people confuse that it's a religious thing. Why don't you clarify this?
I have struggled with my own family too, to begin with, because it is important for us to recognize that Buddha's teaching, often categorized as a religion, are fundamentally a set of techniques and principles.
Mm,
While Buddhism is widely recognized as a religion, the core teaching of Buddha transcend religious boundaries and divides into understanding human emotion and intellect. This let's go back to Sigmund Freud. He talked about id, ego, and superego. Or, in other words, he talked about emotion and intellect.
mm,
Well, 2,500 years ago, Buddha talked the same thing.
mm,
He talked emotion, called chitta. He talked intellect, called mano. Right? So today, we don't uh, uh, keep Sigmund Freud as a religion leader, but Buddha as a religion leader, because he has put that into a bucket. So more you put into these religions, I have mine, you have yours, someone else has theirs. So we group up with that, and then it's not easy to go and grab someone else's bucket, right? Because we have our own limitation. So now, for me, if I think if Buddha is a religious leader, Sigmund Freud should too, because both of them talk about emotion and intellect.
It makes it very clear that because I
So
would
this
never put
this this
Sigmund
is
Freud.
what Buddha's teaching is a technique to
Yeah,
understand
yeah,
who we are.
yeah.
Period.
Oh,
So these all the techniques. Let's go back to the mindfulness. Mindfulness is a technique. It's a human technique that anyone can do. So if we do it properly, we will get benefit. It's for me, it's not for you. So my practice is for me. So this is just a technique that I have to follow
mm,
to upgrade my intellect because my emotion is always take the priority. I make my decisions based on the emotion. So now I need to make sure, okay, how do I bring my intellect here? So that's what the cognitive dissonance is. You fight with your emotion and intellect. So
mm,
you Buddha understood that, and the other the scientists already understood in the West. We know that, and Buddha did it too, and many years ago. Then he identified what is cognitive dissonance is, and then not only identify it, he gave a solution.
yeah.
If you feel like cognitive dissonance, then your goal should be cognitive consonance,
Mm,
which we call today samadhi. But
mm,
unfortunately, samadhi translated as a concentration.
mm,
Samadhi is not the concentration. Samadhi is the equilibrium, what we are going to balance emotion and intellect. So that's the background of Buddha's teaching. Now it's up to us. Are we going to categorize that as a religion,
mm.
or are we going to use that technique and utilize for ourselves to build up our qualities?
As you're talking, I'm thinking so many people are afraid that their decisions they have to be made only from logic. And I often, when I'm working with managers, say there's emotion is always involved in making a decision. And what you're describing is again a validation of that. It's not a question of just logic or just emotion, but the balance between them and attaining that. I like that.
Yeah, because again, we do things because of the emotion, right? We cannot just
Yeah.
be free from emotion. There is no way. I think we are
No.
too, yeah, we cannot go that way. So maybe some people, but not for us. Every day dealing with it. I have an office to look after. I have many workforce that I have to pay monthly salary. So so that's the environment that I'm living with. So I have my own emotion, but when I make my decision, am I going to based on slowly on the emotion or my intellect?
Mm,
So if my emotion is much higher, you don't have room for your intellect. So you need to try to bring this thing up.
yeah.
And that's the technique given by the mindfulness to train your intellect and bring it up.
Mm,
And then to balance it. And that's what the
balance.
cognitive consonance is.
Ah, good. When I work with clients, I always ask them to be more observant of their actions and then to reflect on them. Uh, Managers sometimes ask me, I need to improve how I run my meetings. I said, well, let's begin with you observing yourself in that meeting. Now, a fascinating thing happens is that they do become more observant because they've been asked to do that. And suddenly they begin to see when they're being logical, when they're being emotional. And my sense is this could actually help attain what you're talking about because they suddenly have that opportunity to reflect. And by the way, often people say, I don't have time to reflect. And I keep telling them, you don't have time not to reflect. I wonder if you'd comment on that.
Well, good question, and a good area that we all need time to reflect. Well, reflecting on my journey with mindfulness, it is crucial to start with self-reflection,
Mm,
which is mindfulness, as I point out it. the earlier, the mindfulness is the seventh step of an eight-step process.
mm,
What we do is we jump into the seventh step without knowing what are those prior steps are.
mm,
So the first one is we call harmonious perspective, which we will give a 360 degrees to see things. And then the second one goes to harmonious visualization. Then we know it's basically taking a U turn. If we have done something incorrect, now we have a chance to fix it up and go in the right path now. So the more appropriate explanation might be taking like a U turn.
mm,
When you take a U turn, then comes the third one is harmonious speech. That means the stuff that you talk, you use the proper wording without making a conflict. That's why it is harmonious. And
mm,
then you have harmonious action and you have a harmonious lifestyle. So that gives you opportunity to reflect who you are. So when you practice this mindfulness, reflection is right there because I cannot advise you without I know who I am,
mm,
right? So basically, we all are fighting with ourselves, not knowing who we are. So that's where the self reflection has to be in the top priority.
mm,
I can go back to my boardroom, I can go back to my employees, but I have to talk to myself about harmonious speech, harmonious action, harmonious lifestyle. How do I reflect in front of them, in front of me, and who am I? So, reflection, I take it seriously because that's the result. And if there is not a line, then take a U turn.
mm.
How are you going to take a U-turn? Because you have harmonious perspective, perception. So you think you focus things on 360 degrees before you make a decision, and you create a background. You need a data to process.
Two things come out of what you were just saying. Harmonious speech. Oftentimes, we hope that when a leader speaks to his group, his staff, his company, that he is saying what he really means. Uh, we like to use the word transparent. Some people shy away from that. That's too much. I can't show it all, but that's not just what transparent means. It means that people who are listening can see the consistency of what you're saying with what you're doing. So I loved this aspect of harmonious speech.
Yeah, because when we use these harmonious speech or harmonious actions, we are not trying to create a conflict,
Yeah, yeah,
right? It
yeah.
is not a conflict. We are trying to gather the data and give the validity to the data because, again, start with harmonious perception, harmonious perspective, right? So then you go and balance it. What is right? What is wrong? Is there anything called right and wrong? And how do I
Mm,
implement this? And what is the consequences going to be? How I'm going to treat my people? And
mm.
will this create a conflict? If I do this, then I had to go back and take the U-turn now.
The other thing that came out of this iteration of perspective, harmonious perspective, and harmonious visualization, etc., is that these are, as you do them, they become practices of how you do things. And one of the things I often talked about when I'm working with my clients is you want the practice is not for the sake of the practice alone. It's for a greater reason that you're doing this. And as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking to myself, if I practice each of these, even if I do it imperfectly, the more I practice them, the more the whole will come out as harmonious.
Yes, but the problem in our society, we think that pill can solve our problems, right?
Mm.
So this mindfulness thing, even we jump into the seventh step without knowing what this first six steps are. So how we
Yes,
expect
yes,
to result to be perfect? That's the issue. So now I have read many articles because I started reading these literatures, finding the stuff. Still, I could not find a proper article saying that the mindfulness is a seven step or eight step process. Many people keep talking about mindfulness. If you see the publication, how increased the publication goes up, because mindfulness has become like a very hot topic, and you can make big bucks using the terms itself and produce those workshops and
yes,
all.
yes,
But how many people are talking about mindfulness being the seventh step? Before you come to the seventh step, please do one, two, three, four, five, six,
yes.
and then you mold yourself before you come to the seventh, how to get the full benefit out of the seventh. But
Mm.
what we are trying to do now is, well, we need immediate action. We can't wait. No, we can't wait. We just need it now. Is any pill that I can drink and fulfill, and that's how it goes. But this is not. This is a human technique that we have to understand what it is, where it's coming from, why it is, who am I, how did I do I see myself clearly? If not, how do I do that?
You also mentioned the aspect of you really need to know who you are. You know, what I in my research, I discovered that people who are highly resilient really know who they are. That's one of their characteristics. They have taken the time to really understand who they are. So what I'm seeing is a real connection between what you're talking about and developing the capacity to deal with the unexpected. Um, Also, I think you have done research on mindfulness. Um, and maybe you talked about this, but you discovered four dimensions to it. Would you talk about these?
Yes, this research is like a turning point in my life. So I conducted 3 months research projects involving 24 global leaders in the United States. Some of them are working for Fortune 100 companies, or some of them are dealing with billion-dollar companies. These are CEOs, vice presidents, and directors. So we had a 3 months workshop, and thanks to COVID, during the COVID time, I was able to get this research done. So I invited four Buddhist monks who knows the subject, and I told them, okay, we are talking about only the mindfulness, no any other religious stuff,
Yeah.
because these leaders, they don't want to go with the religions bucket. No, but these four teachers, including this 96-year my guru, was there, and then he came and taught what does mindfulness is, how to practice this properly. Before you go into the mindfulness, we have to go ahead with one, two, three, four, five, six steps. So I did this for 3 months, and I collected the data. I asked all of my other participants to maintain a journal. So they, throughout the 3 months, they enter the data, and I use action research methodology to deal with the data, and I came up with sense of value, deeper capacity for empathy, values driven behavioral change, and greater capacity for introspection. So I found out those four areas. And when I compare these four qualities with eight step, so we call it Noble Eightfold Path, and then it connect with these prior step. So the mindfulness is the seventh step. Before we jump into that, we have a duty to look what are the six prior steps are. But going through this research with in a proper way, getting the help of the people who keep practicing this for years and years and years, and knowing what it is and doing the practice with them. So these are the qualities that I came up with my research.
Could you repeat the four dimensions that you listed?
The one is sense of value, another
Sense
one
of
is
value. Yeah.
sense of values, and the second one is deeper capacity for empathy
Hmm.
and value driven behavioral change, the third one. And the fourth one came as greater capacity for introspection. So I came up with 157 first order themes and 16 second order themes. And then only I found these four aggregate dimensions. I think I followed Joya methodology for that.
You mentioned that you used the action research approach. I wonder if you just say a few words about what that means.
Well, remember you had a question of the reflection. So the action research is come with your action, and then you have to reflect on it with your action. And
Yeah.
then again, you go back. It's a cycle.
Yeah.
Action and the reflections and the action and the reflection. So that's how it goes. So that's what it's so beautiful in the leadership that we needed to practice. Oh, okay. So this is the action I have taken. So this is the result, outcome. How do we reflect it and go back again and again and again and again? And
Mhm.
then you will cultivate those.
You had 100 CEOs do this. How did you convey to them that it was valuable to them to do this exercise?
Um, in a leadership environment, stress is one of the biggest things that we deal with. We have it. We are responsible for many people, but end of the day, we need to make sure how we're going to pay the monthly salaries for all of our employees. That's the difficult part because I cannot say that I cannot pay you this month.
Yeah.
So the stress that what we are dealing with is the most important thing that we should find an answer. So if you go through these human technique, so-called the mindfulness practices, or these 8 steps and following these steps, you will realize, you will reflect on your action, see how relieved you are. This you will not get within a day or two or a month. It's depending on who you are, where your skill is, and then you can feel your stress level because most of the time we are reacting with outside stimuli. In this practice, we trying to pay attention to ourselves and say, okay, how before I react to what I heard, what is happening within myself, what is happening within my body, what is happening with my emotion, what is happening with my thoughts, then only you can uh, act properly without creating any conflict with the other person. So that's where the harmonious actions come
Mhm.
to play.
So you really tapped into the CEO's need to manage that stress level.
Mhm.
Yeah. How did they react to the monks?
Well, first, I think first few session, it was like everything was new to all of us, and we don't know what's the outcome
Yeah,
going
yeah,
to
yeah.
be because they came from a different background. And when you see a monk with the bald headed, they have this orange color robe around them,
Right.
and they talk very slowly. They are very calm, and that's how it is. I'll bring one example here. That was a very funny story. We did one workshop through Zoom, and then we had 4 months, and we had participants were 26 participants. So one time, this oldest monk who's 96 years old, his Zoom didn't work properly. Okay, so then because of the his sounds didn't, we couldn't hear him.
Mm.
And then there was another monk on the room, and he took a call to the head monk and slowly explained him, Bante, just click here, do this, and da. So 26 of us are waiting now. Oh, what's going to happen? Now imagine like when we do a meeting, if the Zoom is not working, like which way we are going through,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, but like it took like 2 or 3 minutes, but
Yeah.
very calm. Everybody pays so attention into that, and it worked very well. And there's no stress. And even he came on Zoom and never mentioned what happened, and he didn't give any reason for that or that. Well, here we go.
How lovely that they had an opportunity to observe those monks living
Yeah.
that harmonious life. I'm sure that even though they may have felt a little impatient, they were probably thinking, "Oh, if I could only be that calm."
Yes, because then most of them wanted to see, okay, how I can become like him when
Yes.
my meeting Zoom is not
Yeah,
working.
yeah.
So that's give a relationship to us to get into them. And also another thing was like a monkey brain, monkey mind.
Mm.
So your mind is jumping from one branch to another branch, and we also like that, right? Our
Yeah.
mind is jumping from here and there and da da da. So they gave the explanation of what this monkey mind is, how it's control, how we can control it, how we can apply into ourselves, how we can apply into our businesses. So they talk about that. So then that gives a really good relationship or connectivity, and then uh, end of the session, none of the participants felt that they talked to a religious leaders. No.
Yep. Ah, beautiful. I was first of all impressed that you were able to get the monks to agree to do it, and secondly that the CEO sat and accepted it. But I think after that initial, in as you say, it was unknown to people, so they were probably willing to be a little bit uncomfortable or you know ambiguous. But I suspected that when the monks began to speak about this, they were delivering such substance of value that after that there was no question that people would listen and stay engaged.
Correct, because one of the other funniest part was like, uh, let's take loving kindness meditation. We call it LMK, right? It's very familiar. Mostly, like even in most of these MBA programs, they tells you to do this loving kindness meditation. But then we have done it, and most of my participants has done those type of, they are exposed to that.
Mm-hmm.
But even the loving kindness meditation, what we going through is incorrect. It shouldn't be loving kindness; it should be loving friendliness, because kindness is something else. So then these monks explain what they are, and then that help the audience, the participants to get so connected to them.
Yeah,
So they found a reason, we should stick with it and
yeah.
we should try to see what it is and let's practice it together and try to grab it to ourselves. So we created that connection.
Mm. I want to eventually have you talk a little bit about how people can begin to bring these practices into their life. But before I do that, I want to ask you how what made you think of bringing research, and you were doing real research, not just doing a quick little um, survey or that kind of thing. You were doing real research to understand a new aspect of our reality. What led you to decide you wanted to do real research as a part of your business?
Oh, no, 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 no. Well, if you go and open BBC, you go open CNN, this topic mindfulness is on the top.
Mhm.
Even I saw CNN had an article about being nice and being kind are two different things. That happened yesterday. Still,
Mm.
it's on CNN website. Yes, because the person who put that article, they did a research and now they keep talking directly saying being nice and being kind is two different things and why it is.
Mm.
But me having access to this Pali teaching or the original teaching, we have been talking this for 2005 some years.
Yeah.
It is there. But unfortunately, because we don't have a proper access, we are like, misinformed.
Yeah.
But still, some of the researchers, like the people who have done mindfulness researchers, their data is so impressive. There is a value into that. So my thing is, well, if we do this like proper way, understanding the mindfulness being the seventh way, the data that we found out could be like much larger,
Yeah.
right? And then also one of the things the BBC there they comes and goes sometime about like bad side of doing mindfulness,
Mm.
right? And then yeah, you get the bad side of doing mindfulness if you are not doing it properly.
Well, speaking of doing it properly, my last question for you. I'm 25 years old. Well, I'm not, but I'm going to assume. I'm just beginning my career. How would you advise me to bring this aspect into my life from a very practical standpoint? What is it that I need to do?
Well, if I knew what I know today about mindfulness when I was 25 years ago, things might be different, really, go in a different direction. This mindfulness technique, it's a human technique, gives an opportunity to see your unseen side of yourself.
Mm.
So imagine with this technique, you have to understand the unseen part of yourself, and then you take your fully yourself to deal with it. And then when you are 25, you are practicing this, utilizing this 100% of yourself, or maybe like 90% of yourself, or maybe 75% of yourself, rather than 25 or 10% of yourself. So then you can be more effective, more productive. That will lead you to reach your goals where you wanted to go. So if we have the access when we become 25 years old,
Mm.
then we have a long way to go. Then we can take our fully ourselves through with our journey. So that's that. The for 25 you, I can advise my advice is well, quicker you know who you are is better for you to apply your skills.
I love it. I love it. I mean, ah, and so many times that's what I have said to young people. That's the place you begin because you have so much to bring to the world. So
Mhm.
get to know this wonderful being that you bring. I have so enjoyed this conversation. You have opened my mind even further about this aspect of mindfulness and how we have inadvertently uh, misunderstood. So now we have an opportunity to clarify. Um, it, are there any final things that you would like to say to the audience?
Well, I think I would like to bring all of us back to cognitive dissonance and cognitive consonance. So we all know if you learn psychology in college or high school, you know what is cognitive dissonance is: fighting with emotion and intellect. And the cognitive consonance is how you're going to balance these together. And the cognitive consonance is the last step of this 8-step process. Remember, the seventh step is the mindfulness, and the eighth step is the cognitive consonance or samadhi. So, our technique should be how we're going to reach out to this cognitive consonance or the balance of our emotion and intellect. All of us can do that. That's where the stress goes away. Because when this is not balanced, we live with the stress. So the stress management also, how you're going to balance your emotion and your intellect. And that's what all this teaching about or the practice about. So I invite people to just practice it. You don't need to pay money to anybody. It is right there. Have access to these original teaching and see whether it's work with you and how is your intellectual happiness is. If you feel that you have your intellectual happiness, well, you're going to be.
Thank you so much for spending the time with me. I am so appreciative, and I know that our audience is as well. So again, thank you, Dr. Gamini Hewawasam.
Thank you very much for having me, and I hope that I was able to help you and your audience in the field of mindfulness. And if they have any questions, I'm here. They can reach out to me, and I will happily engage with them too. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. What an exciting conversation. I told you it was going to be surprising. And it keeps surprising me, even though I have heard some of it before. All right. Well, it's time for us for that last segment of my show, which I've always called the Book of Impacts. But you know what? I've always wanted to have a better title for this segment because I didn't like the sound of the words Book of Impact. I mean, who really understands what an impact is? And so I talked it over with several people, and we came up with some ideas. And I've eventually found a place where I could say, yes, this conveys what I want to convey. So the name of this segment is now going to be called Grounds for Thought. Grounds for Thought. And my first book for my newly named segment is The Difference: Essays on Loss, Courage, and Personal Transformation, edited by Achim Nowak and Rosemary Ravinal. Show you a picture of the book, The Difference. I'll leave that up for a moment so you can record it. Every life is transformed by moments, people, experiences, and that's what has actually made the book. It is chapters written by different individuals exploring all the things in their life, those moments. They describe the book as say, what if you could have an audience with 10 successful humans who have inspired millions of followers around the world to lead more authentic, wholehearted, and expansive lives? In fact, I'm going to say that have had cognitive consonance in their lives. What if you could ask these individuals to pinpoint the one factor or experience that unleashed the greatest personal transformation in their lives? The Difference is a book that captures the reflections of those who have explored their transformational moments, from a motivational coach who went through homelessness to becoming a millionaire, to a prominent psychologist whose 2-year-old daughter drowned in the family pool on her watch, to a chiropractor turned shaman, firewalker, and healer after helping a friend transition. The unvarnished essays in The Difference capture a multicolored tapestry of richly inspiring life stories. The essay I found so moving and relevant to our topic today of deep reflection is the chapter by Dr. Tom Garcia called Roar at the Moon. Tom describes in it the reflection he went through when a dear friend passed after he and his wife had nursed him through many months. As I thought about what Gamini spoke of as a reflection, I was immediately reminded of Tom's detailed, exquisite, and vulnerable reflection of the death of his friend. Death is not the only reason to spend time in mindful reflection, obviously. We have many opportunities in life to explore an event. In any case, what Tom's chapter called to mind was the powerful learning and transformation that happens when mindful reflection is allowed and encouraged. It said to me that anything I want to explore for its meaning for myself or my staff or my company or my family, anything can be explored in depth without fear of losing myself. That last point about not fearing losing oneself is the key. And it helped me to understand what Marie Curie, the famous scientist who explored radioactive substances, said. She said, "Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood." Now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. Marie Curie. That gives you just a little taste from the book, The Difference, Essays on Loss, Courage, and Personal Transformation. A few grounds for thought. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope you have enjoyed the conversation and learned something new. If you would like to explore some aspect with me, schedule a free 30-minute call by sending an email to madeline@madelineblair.com. And if you did learn something, would you post it in social media so that others will have the benefit of what you learned? And perhaps you might even cite, and this is what I'm going to do differently as a result. And of course, if you're on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe. I'm Madeline Blair, wishing you infinite possibilities as you unlock your resilience.